ruined his career. He was taken off the air after this. There's a guy named, his name was Big Al, and he was a cowboy sort of guy. He wore this hat, and they used to joke around, call him Big Al, the children's pal, because he had, you know, he had a show. And on the show, he would do the cowboy thing and sing songs and stuff. And he had kids on there. And there was always 6, 8, 10 kids, sometimes 20 or 30 kids from different places in the country, in Canada. And he would talk about different things. He would talk about the science of farming, or he would talk about, you know, automotive industry, whatever. But he was sort of the cowboy style, right? And the kids loved him. And everybody thought that Big Al loved kids. Except one day, he didn't know the mic was open. And the show was over. Okay? And you know what I mean by an open mic? It means you're still transmitting, right? So the show is over, but sometimes they leave the mic on for an extra 5 or 10 seconds, right? Okay, and sometimes you'll hear somebody saying, hey, you know, you got nice hair or something, and the girl beside them or whatever. It's kind of like, oh, well, I didn't know that was on camera. You know, so people do get embarrassed. But what Al said destroyed his career. What he said was, he said, thank God this is over. I hate these blank kids. And that went on the air to 5, 6 million Canadians. That was the end of Al's career. Now I felt bad for him because he was a good guy, but the point is, if you don't, you know, if you don't love students, it'll come out. You know, you have to really be, this is a profession that you have to be doing because you love it. And if you say, well, I don't really love it, I just kind of feel lukewarm about it, that's okay. But you have to develop over time. Find things to like about this profession. Find things to love about it. It's kind of a requirement. It's not like computers. You know, you can hate programming and still be a reasonably decent programmer. Although it's still not going to be much fun. Any job is always better if you love it. But in teaching, it's almost essential that you really, really care about students. So if you don't, I'm not being critical. I can't make a personal statement to anybody. But work on it. Work on things to like. Find things to like about your students. And over time, you can develop it. I've had days I didn't like students, let's be honest. Okay? I worked in Texas. I had kids that were, you know, dealing drugs and so on, and a lot of challenges. Okay? Well, it could be anywhere. It just happened to be in my situation. I was in Texas. Okay? There were times I was very frustrated. I didn't really like those kids. But you work on it, and you develop it, and then you start to find things. What's good about this kid? What's positive? And you keep asking yourself, and you find things. That's critical. Okay? And the last one is, of course, teaching. Okay? It's an ingredient of pattern. Makes sense, right? I mean, this is a profession. This is really, like I said last week, I think I said it last week, it's like medicine. You practice medicine, you practice teaching. This session tonight we're calling teaching practices, right? Why? Because you'll never get perfect at it. There's always something else, right? A lot of professions, you reach what we call a plateau, or a point where it's very difficult, where you probably can't get too much better, and maybe even your performance will drop off. Athletics are an example of this. You know, if you look at somebody who's, you know, a baseball, you know, a 300 hitter or a 350 hitter, he gets to a certain point, he's probably not going to get any better. If he's hitting 340 or 350, which means that, you know, every 10 times at bat, he gets 3.5 hits. Doesn't mean there's a half a hit, it means on average, right? So he gets 350 hits out of 1,000, say. That's pretty good in baseball. That's quite good. He's going to be making several $1 million a year. That's the top of his profession. But he's going to drop. You can't do that forever. At a certain point in time, you go down. Teaching, you don't have to have a plateau. You can teach till you're 95 if you want, and get better every day. There really isn't. It's a profession that's really developmental. There's always something else you can learn. There's always something you can add to what you're doing. There's always a way that you can do it better. Okay? So, I think that's kind of exciting. Passion for teaching. Okay. I'm going to ask somebody to read that for me. Who wants to read that quote? I think this was very powerful, so I selected it out of several quotes that we could have put up. But I want to talk about it for a minute, but I want somebody to read it first, so who's going to volunteer? I'll pick somebody if nobody volunteers.
I sincerely believe
Go ahead.
that every student is educatable, but some are simply not as intellectually gifted as others. I have also come to appreciate the very average student who works extremely hard, struggles through every examination, never makes the dean's list, but is diligent, conscientious. We have to make a place for average students, and many times they are the most rewarding students to work with.
This is so, so true. A very, very powerful statement. I know that people have their sort of areas that they like and so on. One of the areas I kind of like is sports. I'm a big hockey fan. I'll put that right out there, okay? In ice hockey, it's interesting. Because if you look at people that became outstanding in the profession of coaching, one example, Scotty Bowman, William Scott Bowman, 8 Stanley Cups, 8 championships. That means 8 times his team was the best team, basically the best professional team in the world, playing ice hockey. 8 championships. There's nobody else that's even close. Well, actually, there is one other guy. Toe Blake, I think, also has 8. But nonetheless, you have Scotty Bowman and Toe Blake. Scotty Bowman played hockey for the Montreal Canadiens. I think he was called up for 1 game. 1 game. Played 1 game, and they said, Scotty, you can't play this game. You go back to what they call the farm team. A farm team means a developmental team where they play, and if they get really good, maybe they get a chance to play in the pros. Scotty played 1 or 2 games in the NHL. His team's won 8 championships. I'll tell you why I think that's true. It's true because he understood what it meant to struggle to play well. Because he struggled all of his life. He was never a strong player. He understood, and so he taught his players about fundamental skills, about drills, about how to pass the puck to each other. And his teams won more championships than just about anybody else. He won championships in many different cities. People used to say, well, in Montreal, oh yeah, well, everybody could win in Montreal because they had all the stars, and that might have been true. But then he went to Buffalo, and he won in Buffalo. And he went to Pittsburgh, and he won in Pittsburgh. And he went to Detroit, and he won in Detroit. Everywhere he went, he won. And this is not about winning, it's about why was he able to do that? I think he was able to do it because he was able to bring all the players in. The key, when you talk about sports, is everybody's got, especially in these days, because of the age of big contracts and the money that's out there in these sports, all the teams have 4 or 5 guys that are outstanding. Maybe 8 or 9 guys. And they can pay a lot of money, and every team is going to have that core of people. But what makes the team win, what makes a team able to get to a championship, is being able to bring in the average players and make them stars. Make them outstanding. That's what Bowman was able to do. Another guy, Don Cherry, same way. Don Cherry was a guy that got called up, not 1 game again, played 1 game for the Boston Bruins. And then they sent him down to the minors. He spent 25 years playing minor league hockey. He used to joke around about riding buses. He'd been on just about every bus in North America. Because in minor leagues, they don't use planes, they use buses. So they go in from bus to, I think in these days some of them have planes, but in those days, this was in the 60s and 70s, it was all bus travel. You know, and so you had to travel 15, 16 hours from one end of the US or one end of Canada to the other on a bus. By the time you got there, your back was like, But 25 years in the minor leagues, when he got to the NHL, his teams did not win championships. They were never good enough to win championships, but he got his teams to the finals, even though his players were very, very average. In fact, maybe below average. He understood this. This is critical with students. If you can say, remember I gave you an example about Howard last week. Howard probably wouldn't have been considered average. Howard would probably be considered far below average. But Cloud and I didn't see him that way. We saw a guy that needed to be given an opportunity. And this is what Dr. Stephenson is suggesting, and how you should see kids, or I'm sorry, Dean Rojek is suggesting. Okay. What I want you to do right now, if you don't have it with you, that's okay, because I'll bring it out. And I already told people that I don't necessarily want people copying stuff, so you don't need to have it. But I'm going to ask for a volunteer to help me out here a little bit. Who feels like writing a little bit on the board? Anybody? I'm going to pick somebody. If nobody feels like writing, I'll just pick somebody you feel like. You feel like it, whether you think it or not. Okay? No? Nobody? All right. Actually, you feel like writing on the board early. You volunteer. Go out there and just write down the key words. Do not write all this. What extraordinary teachers teach. If you have this with you, it's on Roman numerals, page 26. But you do not need to have it with you because Laxman's is going to keyword it. Just write sort of about 15 keywords off of that. Is that okay? You know what I mean? You understand how to do that? Just write the keywords. Okay? I'll put the heading up there. The heading is going to be what extraordinary. Maybe just read it out. You know what? Let's do it this way. Just read it to me. That's okay. What extraordinary